Freedom of speech is the most important right that we have. It is inalienable, and I think that it should never be infringed, which is a controversial thing to say because a lot of people disagree with me. A lot of people, and especially a lot of people on the left, want to ban what's called hate speech. And hate speech is just anything that's generally bigoted, hateful, or discriminatory against a group of people. And while this is no doubt a good cause, I don't think a lot of people fully understand what the effects will be if we decide to ban hate speech. Like I said, hate speech advocates are fighting for a great cause. We as a people should constantly be fighting to eradicate hateful and bigoted speech from public discourse. But that's just it. It should be the job of the people. That job should not be placed in the federal government. Once you ban hate speech, you set the precedent that the federal government can regulate what we say, and this is a very dangerous precedent. This is very important. This is the reason why myself and others are opposed to these hate speech laws. Not because they will eradicate bigoted speech from public discourse, that's a great thing, but because of the unforeseen consequences that can arise from giving the government the power to regulate our speech. For example, let's say in 2018, the United States had passed an anti-hate speech law. And after the passing of this law, people were unable to say racist, homophobic, sexist, bigoted things. Everyone is happy. Everything is great. People are less hateful. Now, let's fast forward to the worst year in history, 2020. In 2020, after yet another example of police brutality, nationwide protests break out. And during these protests, people start proposing very new and radical changes that can take place in this country, such as defunding and even abolishing the police. Since hate speech is now legal, a police officer can go to a court and make the argument that the things these protesters are saying should be considered hate speech. The police officer could make the argument that people are making vast generalizations about the police, that the things these protesters are saying are deeply offensive to the police, and that the things that these protesters are saying are greatly putting police officers' lives at risk. And what is stopping the court from agreeing with the cop? Effectively ending these Black Lives Matter protests and effectively suppressing the Black Lives Matter movement. And of course, we as people can clearly understand why racism should not be allowed in public discourse, but criticizing the police should be. But from the point of view of the law, it is much harder to make that distinction because hate speech does not have a clear-cut definition. And now hopefully you can see why I'm against hate speech laws. It's not because I don't want hateful speech eradicated from society, of course I do, and I'm going to work tirelessly to make sure that it is eradicated from society. But it's because of the unforeseen side effects that can come from allowing the government to regulate what we say. One of the best examples of unforeseen consequences in U.S. history is the 14th Amendment. Originally, the 14th Amendment was intended to give black people citizenship status after the abolition of slavery, which of course is one of the best amendments to ever be ratified. But because of how the 14th Amendment was worded, lawyers were eventually able to use it to make the case that corporations should be considered as people and should be given the same rights as people. And this case actually worked. And this is one of the biggest reasons why corporations in America are so powerful today. And that is why I think that we should never give the government the power to regulate what we say. I think that the power should be in our hands, the people's hands, to establish the boundaries for what people should be allowed to say in society. If you hear someone saying hateful things, it is your job to go up to that person and confront them and tell them why they should not be saying those things. I just don't think the government should ever have that responsibility. What do you guys think? Do you think that the positives that could come from a hate speech law outweigh the potential negatives that I outlined? Or do you agree with me that the potential negatives are far worse than the positives that would come? Let me know what you think. I'm really interested. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for watching.